Welcome to the Other Side Pod. I'm Nadine. We're not experts. We're just humans having a human experience we think you can learn from, or relate to, or laugh at, or cry over. So hit download, dive in, and hear how folks found themselves on the other side. But yeah, he's the most precious little baby boy. And I thought, should I kick him out for podcasting? But I kind of like him in here.
Theo has a wonderful energy that I think the podcast would benefit from, so that's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Even if he starts barking at something, I think I'd leave it in.
It's nice to know there's something else living in the room, you know?
Yeah, and something so sweet and ginormous. I love them. All right. Yay. Okay, I have a random question.
Go for it.
Did you have a favorite book as a little kid?
Oh, that's a great question. I, as a really small kid, really loved Goodnight Moon. There was something really eerie about the book that I loved. It was the lack of people, and it's just the silence of a room that I found really off-putting, and I couldn't really get it, so I kept wanting it read to me over and over again. But I was a voracious reader as a kid, and I used to read through like math classes and ignore the teacher. And my first all-nighter was pulled reading, what book was it? It was The Help when I was, I think, like 12 or something. So I always love reading, but now I kind of do it professionally. It's a lot more difficult to get into a good book. So I really only read one book for fun every year. But I'm always constantly reading otherwise.
One book a year for fun. My heart.
Yeah.
I mean, you could slip in Goodnight Moon in there.
It's a quick read, I hear.
You could fit it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm asking because I literally was just brushing my teeth, and for some reason, the song, you know that song? It's like, when you go out to the woods today. I don't remember what it's from, but it reminded me of my childhood favorite book, which is called Peter and the Wolf.
Oh,
I
I've never
loved
heard of
my
that.
mom reading me. Oh, my mom would read it, and and I can't remember what it was about. I have it. I since have gone and gotten it, but my memory, I forget what it's about. But I remember her specifically going quietly. It was like ASMR before ASMR was a thing, and I would just be like, anyway,
Yeah.
Erin,
Hi,
tell us who you are.
Nadine. My
Hi.
name is Erin McCart. I am a 27-year-old PhD student. I specialize in communication and media theory. I also have a background in gender studies and queer theory in particular. I've studied everything from drag queens to reality TV to queer archives and now cancer. And I studied cancer because at age 27, about 8 months ago at this point in time, I was diagnosed with stage 4B, metastatic adenocarcinoma, which is endometrial cancer that has metastasized to my lymph nodes and lungs. I have undergone radiation, chemotherapy, but by and large, I've been told that my case of cancer in particular is incurable. And so right now I'm in this stage of finding out what it's like to live with advanced cancer at such a young age.
What's the day you were diagnosed?
It was November 29th, 2024. It was actually a crazy couple of days leading up to November 29th. And before the crazy couple days, a really painful about 2 months. What's more important to me than the 29th being my diagnosis day was my last normal day that I recall without pain and without symptoms. And that was September 30th. So about 2 months prior to that. That was my last day that I had spent going for a kilometer-long swim and spending time with friends at my partner's family cottage and having a lovely sort of last grasp at summer. And then the very next day, I started feeling a lot of abdominal pain and discomfort that I shouldn't have. And After a couple of days, I was like, okay, I'm going to be responsible and see a doctor. And the doctor kind of dismissed me and said, oh, I just think you have IBS and anxiety. And I was like, I, I don't think
Mm.
you're right. That doesn't sound right, but that's okay. And then a couple days went and my symptoms got worse. One of the biggest symptoms, specifically of endometrial cancer, is menstrual bleeding. That is not normal. And so I went back to the doctor and I was like, look, I've been bleeding way too much. This should not be happening. And that family doctor yelled at me for taking up his
Ugh,
time, for wasting his time, saying you were just here about 10 days ago. And I persisted and told him, look, my symptoms have changed. My reason for being here is different. And then after sitting down, he was like, oh, yeah, you do have to go to the emergency room. Should I call you an ambulance? So in the span of 30 minutes, it went from him yelling at me to then realizing how much pain I was in, how much bleeding was happening, and sending me to the ER. And that was just kind of the
wait, can
first
you?
of, yeah, go for it.
What prompted him to yell at you?
Yeah, so it was about 5 p.m. and his practice closed at about 6. So I'm guessing he had a longish day. And he came in and I said, hello, sorry to see you again. And he said, I want to make one thing very, very clear right now. And it's that I will not have my time wasted. I had just seen you. When I took you on as a patient, I assumed you were healthy, and I don't have the time to be dealing with this. I have hundreds of patients who need my attention every single day, and you will not be wasting my time with concerns that don't exist. So why are you
Erin,
here?
I'm so sorry. That's quite awful. Was Sam,
Yeah.
your partner, was she with you
No,
at the
so this
time,
was
like
the
in there?
one time where
Mm,
usually I have a really long life of being medicalized, which we could talk about in a little bit how that's kind of uniquely prepared me in a lot of ways for having
mm.
cancer. But this was the one appointment where I was like, I'm going to be an adult and I'm going to take myself to the doctor and it'll be a normal thing because people do this all the time. And this is how you address your problem. So I kind of brought myself to that place of being like, I can do this alone. I've got this. I can be my own medical advocate. And it was the one time I got screamed at.
Wow, I'm so sorry for that experience.
Yeah, I am too. And me being who I am, I'm inclined to research. I'm a curious person. And you can't deny a patient care because they're not healthy. And
Yeah.
it's a really wrong thing to assume that you have to be healthy in order to get a doctor's attention or to be worth their time to look at your complaint. One thing that's worked against me this entire medical process has been trying so hard to be coherent, to be really clear, to try and convince doctors that I'm worth their attention and care, that I'm not exaggerating, that I am reasonable and educated, that I can articulate exactly what's wrong with me. It's because I was sort of cool, calm, collected that they consistently underestimated how severe my pain was, how severe my symptoms were. And it was only until I finally got an MRI months and months later, an emergency MRI, that they realized how severe the cancer was and how much had been overlooked. So that was kind of just
Wow.
the first beginning
Right.
of the doctor visits. Because after I was told to go to the ER immediately, I immediately got myself to the emergency room right after I left the doctor's office, after being very rattled. And uh, I went to the ER 7 more times before they discovered cancer
7 more times in what time span?
in the span of 6 weeks.
So from that appointment when this man yells at you for wasting his time to 6 weeks later, that's when you were diagnosed.
Yes. And my symptoms had escalated in that time span. And two of those visits, I was brought to the ER by ambulance. And I had researched, am I going to the wrong hospital? Should I be going to a different hospital? And I was like, no, I'm going to the largest hospital in the Ottawa region with the largest capacity for an emergency room. Every other emergency room considered far worse. So I was at the normal Canadian standard in a lot of ways. And the first ER visit, hours and hours there, the doctor did no imaging and just sent me home with 5 hydromorphone pills saying, look, I've got a girlfriend. She tells me medical research for women is really underfunded and that I don't get it. But periods are hard. So it sounds like you just have a really bad period. Take these pain meds and I hope they help. And then he sent me home. Yeah.
Why? I know we can't know why, and it's a layered answer, but why? Because I know your brain, because you and I know each other, and you love to dig in and understand things. Why do you think you were continuously dismissed?
I have a strong hunch that it's my age. I have a really strong belief that they looked at my chart and they saw 27. And at that point in time, they kind of said, no matter what it is, it can't be so severe that it requires an emergency CT scan. It can't be so bad that it requires hospitalization. And so they just sent me home time and time again. And even with each visit, they escalated. They did respond to this being a second visit or a third or what may be. And so the second time I got an ultrasound. The third time I finally got a CT scan. The fourth time I finally got admitted to the hospital. And I didn't want to be the annoying person. I didn't want to be nagging or wasting their time or seeming like what I was experiencing wasn't bad enough. There's a lot of sort of self-gaslighting that my partner Sam can
Yeah.
really attest to of me being like, oh, I'm just in unbelievable pain and can't leave the house. And I lived under a heating pad at all times a day, taking Tylenol and Advil as much as possible in a 24-hour period. But it's not that bad. I'm just making it up. The doctors, they won't believe me.
I think it's a
So,
part of being a woman, honestly, like
mhm,
that we do self-gaslight in pain because part of it is, yeah, every month it's some pretty bad pain for a lot of us.
yeah.
Everyone's different. I understand that, but somehow you still get up and you go and you do things. And then when something else happens, you're like, is it that bad?
Yeah, it makes me think of one of my favorite quotes from Fleabag, which is that women are built with pain inside. That's just who we are. And so if you have that kind of anatomy, you're used to seeing your own blood all the time, which is a very jarring thing when you think about it. And it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, you're used to pain just happening out of nowhere. And it makes me think of when you broke your ankle and then you continued to teach the step class I was in.
Right.
And
You
being
were
like,
in
Nadine,
class
are
that
you
day.
okay? Yeah, you were on the step beside me when you fell. Like, are you okay?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just continue teaching this on a broken ankle. Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon, but here we are. We
Yeah.
both got help.
We both got the help eventually, which is what matters. Yeah. But yeah.
So yeah, sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, all that's to say is it's really hard to get pain taken seriously. And I think the younger you are, the more they're likely to dismiss you. And I do think gender had a huge part of it where they genuinely just there's so many things wrong with the female anatomy. I also got about 20 pelvic exams in the span of that period of time. And there's such limited information that can be ascertained from a pelvic exam, an abdominal exam, even an ultrasound, that they don't really know what to do with that kind of anatomy. They just assume that pain is inherent and they assume that it's a problem for a specialist, that emergency room doctors are more like mechanics at a Jiffy Lube where they're used to, doing the oil change, swapping out wipers, changing out tires. They're not used to getting into the computer and resetting if that
Mm.
on your car is going wrong. And so ER doctors are really about trying to address the emergency situation and to get you home as safely and as soon as possible, which makes a lot of sense. Whereas a specialist is meant to sort of do those long tests and to do imaging and can take their time, and they know a lot more about that one specific thing. So yeah, it's also about who you're kind of dealing with and who's looking at the problem.
Yeah, who you're being referred to and how long it takes to get in and yeah. You know what's interesting? You say you think it's because of, or one of the factors was your age. On the flip side of that, when we get older, we're equally dismissed because not
Mhm.
in our 40s, I don't think. I haven't been, that's not my experience, but I think of my great aunt who lived to be 103, and after a certain age, they were so dismissive with any of her doctor's appointments because it's like, yeah, you're 93, that's going to happen, which I also get to some extent, but uh, come on, like this is a human being in front of you who is still out walking every day and doing her own grocery shopping and so it's almost like, and I don't know if this is for men and women because I only have my own experience, but is there like a certain time frame where it's like, okay, well, you've got to be between this age, and we're gonna like nail this level of care.
Yeah,
And I mean, we could talk about our healthcare system for the next 5 days
yeah,
consistently and still not figure out how to fix that system. But yeah.
yeah. When is
So
the ideal time to be a patient?
I don't know.
I don't know, and
I
I'll let
don't
you know
know.
if I find it out, but I have a feeling I won't.
I think it's like I do have my family doctor is I really truly adore that woman and my gynecologist as well. So I feel very grateful and lucky that I've gotten some incredible care. But I know a lot of other stories which it hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to yours and your experience. So when you are told this is cancer, you're in the hospital.
Yes. So if we flash forward through a couple of really painful ER visits where, additional information was gathered, but I was really just sent home where they said, there's nothing we can really do. We don't really know what we're looking at. There was at one point in time I was put on a really aggressive regime of antibiotics because they're like, could it be an STI that doesn't show up on any blood work and testing? Perhaps. Let's just throw you on some antibiotics. So I was doing the best I could to follow directions, all that kind of stuff. I even have a surgery in between there where on Halloween of all times, and I just don't recommend getting surgery on Halloween because the scrub nurses wear like skeleton and zombie scrubs. And so as you're coming in and out of anesthesia, probably the most soothing thing to look at. It's a little too
No,
scary. No.
you're like, am I still on the plane of Earth that I was on when I went under? Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking, man, it's weird to look at a skeleton where I know you'll be seeing mine. I don't, this is very strange. Yeah, so it eventually got to the point after ER visit number 5 that they had to do surgery. Now, I was meant to have a polypectomy because my gynecologist had known for months and months that I had polyps in my uterus to be just removed. They were just unnecessarily there. But the surgery I was currently, I had to wait about a year and a half to get that scheduled. So I was just holding tight, assuming it wasn't that big of a deal. And it finally got to the time where in the ER, the doctors were like, do you have a really severe case of endometriosis that's causing this pain? We can only really diagnose endometriosis through surgery. So we'll go and do that and we'll do the routine polypectomy while we're there. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I get rolled into emergency surgery. I remember changing into my gown, like in the moving cart, trying because it happened so
Really?
quickly. Yeah. I was told I would have to wait a little bit while, that they're going to consult, see if a surgeon was available. And they immediately picked me up in the ER and said, okay, you're okay going to surgery now, right? Well, I guess I know. So start taking out all my piercings and everything back, handing it to my mother-in-law, being like, tell everyone I love them. I'll see you in a
Oh
little
my God.
bit. So yeah, they go and do the surgery and they don't find endometriosis. But what they did find, what was causing the vast majority of my pain, was a twisted ovary. So that doesn't typically happen. It's kind of a more unusual, rare thing. But my ovary was essentially twisting and untwisting itself and cutting off circulation for those 6 weeks, which was causing pain, and my uterus was freaking out that it started doing labor-like contraction. So it was almost like I was in the pain of similar to labor. I have no idea what it actually feels like for about 6 weeks' time. And so they finally discovered
Also,
that.
just for people, like a twisted ovary is on the pain. Like I haven't had it, thankfully, but I've heard that if you go to describe that pain, one being nothing and 10 being like, I need to go to the ER,
Mhm.
where is it? A
It's
twisted
a
ovary? Like,
it's 10 every single time. And I'm no stranger to pain. I like to think I have a high pain tolerance. A couple of years ago, I was walking down some icy steps and I fell down 3 stairs and I fell and I broke my hip, which, and in addition to dislocating my tailbone, I thought it was just my tailbone for the longest time. And it turns out I shattered my hip in 2 places. And I lived with it, didn't bother going to the hospital. I was kind of like, well, this happens when you fall. You're just achy for a while. I'll be fine. And it turns out that I'd fractured, dislocated my tailbone and my pelvis. I,
and wait a minute, you
yes,
also came to movement classes because at the time I owned a
yes,
studio where we taught movement classes. And I remember when you fell because you were like, oh, my back or your lower spine hurt, but you had actually broken your hip.
yes. I found
So we've both
out
done movement
years later.
classes with broken bones.
Yes. Which, I mean, it's not a
I
sisterhood I want to be a part of. I don't think it's maybe the best one, but I'm glad to be here.
No, but my goodness, do I have a lot of grace for you and I.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm no stranger to pain. Like I don't think I'm very squeamish or that it overcomes me easily. But I would describe the twisted ovary at 10 out of 10 pain, where it is the slow death of your organ on top of it being completely misplaced, and it's you have an incredible amount of nerve endings in your lower abdomen, no matter what sort of anatomy you have. It's just a very sensitive part of your body. It's where your digestion is, it's where your reproductive organs are. So there's a lot of sensitivity there. So to have the nerve sort of tied into this incredibly sensitive part of your body and it's slowly losing blood flow and dying inside of you, it's quite painful. And so they discovered that and untwisted it. And then, almost as a routine secondary part of the surgery, they did this polypectomy. Whenever they do that, they always take a sample of tissue just to get an idea of maybe what caused the polyps, what's happening, that sort of thing. And so, at first, when I had heard that they untwisted the ovary and that it went really well and there was no endometriosis, I was relieved because I thought the worst of it was over and that the routine
Mm.
secondary part went well. And then they said it took about 3 weeks to recover from surgery, and I was not getting better. This is the kind of
Mm.
surgery that's the laparoscopy, where they insert a hole in your belly button for a camera and gas, and they have two sort of other areas to put in robotic arms. It's supposed to be a really easy surgery to recover from, so say minimally invasive. I didn't even have stitches; they just needed surgical glues, very tiny incisions. But those 3 weeks went by and I kept feeling worse, and I was getting more tired. My I was still in a different kind of pain. It wasn't as severe, but I was still in a different kind of pain, and at this point, it was almost like all my joints were on fire throughout the day.
Mm.
And again, I was like, I'm just being a baby. This is fine. I've never had major surgery before, so I'm just getting used to it. Be okay. And then those 3 weeks were up, and this is the thing where if someone is a little squeamish, I'm so sorry. But the one major thing where I was like, "Okay, something's wrong, and I really need to see my gynecologist," is that my clitoris was, like, 5 times its normal size and
Five times.
incredibly painful.
So it was growing in size over the 6 weeks
It was
or
not good. It
just
was more like it
suddenly?
was getting more and more swollen. And at first I was kind of like,
Gosh.
oh, maybe it's just like, surgery. The whole thing's been surgery on. It's
Mhm.
angry and inflamed. And at first it was kind of like, oh, that's just annoying. But then it got to the point where it was like a horrible heartbeat feeling kind of swollen pain, which is a terrible thing. And like in retrospect, my brain's
Yeah.
really blocked the feeling of it, but I can remember the event. And so I can't remember exactly what it felt like, but I know that I was like, okay, I'll call the gynecologist and hopefully she'll see me as soon as possible. So I called the office and the receptionist gets back to me immediately, which is very strange, not like this office, which is fine. They're very busy.
Wait, did you have to leave a voicemail saying,
Uh-huh.
"Hi, my
Sure
clit
did.
is 5 times
Exactly.
5?"
I
Did you get that voicemail?
I would love to have a recording of that voicemail being like, "Hi, good morning, Angie," or the receptionist's name for her own face, her anonymity. "Hi, Angie. Yeah, this is Erin LaPerch again. Date of birth is blah 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 blah. Yeah, I was really hoping this doctor has some time to see because my clitoris is very painful and not its normal size. Can you help me?" And
Oh,
so
no.
she called me back being like, "Yeah, no, that sounds unusual. The doctor said she's got that you called and can see you today." And I was like, "Okay, great." So I, head on over, and this time my partner Sam is definitely with me in the doctor's office. And I sit down, and I remember seeing in the tiny exam room, there's like wooden figurines of skiers hanging from like a mobile on the ceiling. And I was like, this is
So
a,
relaxing.
yeah, I didn't realize they made mobiles for adults. It's
Me
very
neither, actually.
concerning. Yeah.
I wish it was just like 5 really big clits.
Yeah.
Then you would have been like, aha, I'm in the right health. This is the
Yeah,
level of care I need.
exactly. I've been like, oh, wow, this is so relaxing. I feel like I'm in the right place. So the doctor, she comes in and she was like, "Oh, have you seen your test results on my chart from the surgery?" And I went, "No, I haven't actually." And she was like, "Okay, well, I'm really glad you're here. I'm very glad you're sitting. Don't want to be the one to tell you this, but you do have cancer." And my partner Sam and I were so relieved. We were so happy when she initially told us it was cancer because at that point in time, I'd kind of known something was wrong with my uterus. I'd known had always had issues with bleeding way too much and pain and discomfort. And I had really been gunning for a hysterectomy, which at further earlier, a year earlier at this point, this doctor told me no doctor in Canada would ethically do a hysterectomy on a 27-year-old unless they had to. And so at this point in time, I realized that having cancer, especially in the uterus, was my one-way ticket to a hysterectomy, something that I'd always wanted. And of course, we were concerned and worried, but it felt so relieving to finally have somebody acknowledge on beyond just a surface level, we'll patch something up kind of problem, that there was something wrong and there was a label
Of
for it.
course. Yeah. Validating,
And
right? Because you
yeah,
spent a long time telling yourself your pain wasn't valid in many ways. And even when you went to the hospital or doctors, any medical appointment, you weren't validated over and
exactly.
over and over. Okay, wait.
Yeah,
So it's in your chart, but you'd had the surgery 3 weeks prior.
exactly
So
3
for three
weeks.
weeks, people knew that you had cancer, but no one told you.
Correct. And when I looked back,
Erin?
there was 13 days that had passed when those results were posted, and then when I finally saw my gynecologist, who did not perform the surgery but was a surgeon, and there were 13 days that had elapsed between when the test results hit my chart and when I had spoken to the doctor.
So if you hadn't have called the doctor that day, when would anybody have bothered to tell you?
We don't know. We
Right?
don't know.
So did she know, the doctor that told you that you had cancer, did she know to the extent?
No, because her next sentence were, "That's an unusual reaction, but okay." So, endometrial cancer is extremely unusual in someone premenopausal. Very, very unusual. But it's considered to be one of the most curable forms of cancer. So at this point,
Oh,
Sam and I were like hooting and hollering. We were elated because we said not only is there a word for it, there's an entire network, there's an urgency with the word cancer that this will be taken care of. And most importantly, it's curable that I'll have a surgery and fingers crossed this will be out of my life. This is kind of how it was presented to me by my gynecologist. And she's like, however, the clitoris thing, that's unusual, not really related to cancer. I think it might be something that has to be drained or dealt with in an OR. So I'm so sorry, you have to go to the hospital again. But I'll call ahead and make sure that they just admit you. That was great.
great.
I was in the hospital, I was ready to go. We drove over immediately. We got into the room, and then they started doing some imaging just before they put you into an OR. And so at first they sent me for an emergency ultrasound. And then they're like, we're going to put you through a CT scan just to be sure. And then after the CT scan, this is when I knew something was wrong. About 12 hours later, they're like, yeah, we don't really feel comfortable doing surgery at this point in time, but we have booked an emergency MRI, which you will get in about 45 minutes. So I've never heard of somebody get an MRI within a 45-minute time period, which really indicated to me that something was wrong. So they
Mm-hmm.
take me down, they do the MRI. I've never had one before. I describe it as a sleeping bag rave, where you're kind of in a really tight tube and there's just a lot of thumping noises. So if you're okay with raving, you'll love an MRI.
But no drugs, no
But no
recreational
drugs,
drugs.
unfortunately. You
Wait,
gotta,
did you
it's
wear
a bring your
headphones
own.
and like,
No,
did they play music for you?
no, this is the Ottawa hospital version. So I put cotton balls in my ears and I put a dry washcloth over my eyes. And then they sent me on
A
my way.
dry. I like that you say dry wash.
It was a dry wash, not a soothing, cooler,
Sounds
warm
like
one.
sounds like I was your nurse because the one time David he passed out from pain and because he had hurt his knee skiing and I come
Mm.
into the situation I'm like, oh my god, what do I? And he was like, get me a face cloth because he'd hit his face and he was bleeding. So I like run to the bathroom, bring him back a face cloth, and he holds up this dry, rough face cloth and was like, can you run it under the water, you absolute monster? Can you? And I'm like, just I did not miss my calling in the medical field.
I'm the same way. I would not have made a great doctor myself or nurse. And that's to say, for anybody listening, if you're offering a helpful washcloth, dampen it a little. It goes a
Yeah,
long
just
way.
touch, just touch.
Yeah, just touch
Okay, so
water.
they slide you under with a dry washcloth over your eyes and cotton balls in your ears. Okay, and how long are you in the MRI machine for?
It depends on what you're getting scanned. I've had quite a few MRI since. And for me, that
Mm.
was a lower abdominal MRI, which lasted anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour. And
Ooh,
your goal is to be as completely still as possible.
an
So
hour.
about an hour, yeah.
I had no
And
idea.
at first they were like, yeah, it'll be 30, 45 minutes. But it did end up taking about an hour to complete. And then they sent me back to my room.
Okay, no,
Mhm.
wait, I'm back on this
Yeah, yeah,
MRI
go
thing.
ahead.
What what do you think about in that hour? I mean, you know you have cancer. You're
Mhm.
like, best case scenario, I get hysterectomy out of this deal.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's curable. But then like your spidey sense is telling you something's off, which like intuitively you feel things out before you know things.
Mm.
So you're lying there. Is your head spinning? Do you remember?
Yeah. Yeah, I do actually. The very first MRI I had, I remember being terrified. I had never
Mhm.
had this kind of imaging before. I've never had to be so still before in my life. It felt like my life kind of depended on my stillness in a lot of ways. So as I'm laying there, I'm trying really hard to access the yoga classes I've done before, where your job is to quiet your mind as much as possible. But I really couldn't. I was terrified and nervous and didn't want to twitch or shake or move or anything. And so to calm myself, I just started walking myself through my grandmother's house that I really loved to visit when I was young. I spent almost every weekend with her growing up. I even have her house tattooed on me. And
Mm.
so, as something that's soothing and calming, she doesn't live there anymore. And she died about 5 years ago. But I just sort of walked myself through her house and tried to remember details and those kinds of things as something that was soothing that I could focus on that would bring me a lot of comfort in a very scary time. And eventually, when they sort of pull you out and it's all over, I got wheeled back up to the hospital room. And you're absolutely right. You really do know when something's wrong. And in those moments where I was telling myself my pain wasn't that much or the bleeding was manageable or what may be, I really was trying to feel like I had a sense of control, that it wasn't as bad as I kind of knew it was. And although I had known at that point it was cancer, by the time the MRI rolled around, I had a feeling of, oh, I don't think this is going to be an easy thing. That this is not
Mm.
going to be just the hysterectomy and let it be over. That this is going to be so much bigger. And then eventually, Sam and I then waited in my hospital room for over over a day to get the results because a radiologist has to go and interpret them and then contact the doctors. And so the day had passed, and finally it was Sunday. The MRI was a Friday night. And the doctor comes in and is unbelievably heavy and sorrowful when she walks into the room. And so my
You sense
partner,
it
yeah,
immediately.
immediately. There is such an intense sadness I see from the majority of healthcare providers, especially those who aren't in cancer institutes, because when they look at my chart, it's quite dire. It's quite bad. And so the doctor walked into this room, and at this point, she was quite bubbly, quite vigorous, and a blunt to the point person. And she was really soft and really quiet,
Mm.
and said, I'm not a cancer specialist, but your MRI results have come back and it indicates that the cancer has spread. Wherein she kind of walked through exactly. And at that point, they realized because of the MRI that my clitoris wasn't swollen and enlarged because of a cyst or anything else, but because the cancer had actually metastasized there, where there was cancer choking out the nerve endings that go to the clitoris and deliver it blood and the blood vessels. And because there's so much cancer there, it cut it off, causing it to swell. And she was like, the cancer is really extensive. It's metastasized in ways that are very unusual that we haven't really seen before or heard of before. And she's a gynecologist. And so she was like, it's not only, in the entire genital region and there's a tumor in the uterus, but it's also spread to your lymph nodes and your lungs are covered in what the radiologist calls innumerable nodes, where there's just so many spots and dots of cancer they couldn't even count it. So they said they don't, we don't really know if it's spread much further. And she was like, I'm not an oncologist, so we're going to give you a referral to the oncology team. We're going to try and get you home later today because there's not much else that we can do at this point, and you can go talk to the oncologist in Ottawa and they'll see what they can do. And she didn't really, beyond late stage, she didn't really say anything. But at this point, I'm kind of looking at when endometrial cancer goes to the lungs and it's metastasized, what does that mean? And the second the cancer leaves the pelvic region, especially for endometrial, it's automatically considered stage 4 or 4B because you can't really go back from that point once it's spread to other parts of the body. Endometrial cancer is kind of a funny bird. When it metastasizes outside of the pelvis, it either goes to the lungs, to the bones, so specifically the spine, or the brain. And so I hadn't realized there was a sort of tightness in my chest, that I didn't realize that it was a bit harder to breathe than usual. And then when it kind of came to the surface that my lungs were covered on the exterior in tumors, like, oh yeah, taking a deep breath is hard. I hadn't really
Ah.
noticed.
And you don't remember when that sense of taking a deep breath was hard began. You just all of a
Yeah,
sudden were like, right, this is a sensation I've experienced.
because
This isn't right.
the
So it's
most
almost like made sense for you? Mhm.
Yeah, well, especially because up until this point, the largest problem was the pain that was really far away from the lungs. So I was not focused on my deep breath. I wasn't able to really do cardio because I was at home trying to distract myself from the pain that I was in. And so it was only later when that kind of dissipated, I was like, oh, yeah, I should not be winded going down the block. That's not at all like
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
So,
Do they have
yeah.
any sense of when this started to grow in your body? Are they able to
No
no.
idea. And it's hard to tell because the biopsy they took in that surgery way back on Halloween, it's called they kind of scale it based off of the type of cell they see of how aggressive the cancer moves, and they're called the phagotypes. And so there's type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 is that looks kind of cancerous, but it's mostly a normal cell, but it will spread as cancer. Type 2, it's on the brink. Type 3 is the most dangerous, most aggressive. I do have the type 3, the most aggressive cell type. So even if it had been just a month since the surgery, for example, because it's the most aggressive cell type, there's no clear sense on when it started versus when it spread, because it would have just spread really aggressively, really quickly, anyways. But one thing I know for certain is the CT scans I'd had prior in the fall during those innumerable ER visits compared to the CT scan I had in the hospital that very time, the mass that they had called unidentified and just assumed it was a cyst or something had grown multiple centimeters in multiple directions. So it moved
Oh,
very quickly and just in the span of a few weeks. Yeah. So at this point in time, I'm pretty devastated. The worst part
mm.
wasn't knowing that I had cancer. It wasn't not the fear of not knowing what was happening, not learning how advanced it was. It was having to call my parents and my family, my siblings, and to tell them that, yeah, so that cancer I told you about a few days ago, it's actually really advanced. This is exactly what the doctor told me. That having to be the one to break that news to my family who lived out of town and far away was unbelievably difficult. And I would not wish on anybody.
Was it harder than hearing the news with Sam next to you, your partner, now your
Yeah.
wife?
Yeah, now my
Mhm.
wife,
Mhm.
significantly. It was much harder because Sam and I could be a united front. She was hearing the exact same things I was hearing. And so we could lean on each other and process it together. But when I was calling my mom in the hospital on the phone, it was just me and her. And so I was her source of information and the person it was happening to. They both my family, they didn't have anything to say. They were shocked, they were in pain, and it was just it seemed impossible or unfathomable to process.
It brings me back to not the same experience, but now I think of my mom in a bit of a different way. She had to call me and tell me that my dad had cancer. And actually, now that I think about it, they both had to call me and tell me when they found out it was stage 4. And of course, I mean, I felt a lot of feelings and I knew it was hard for them as they were saying it, but I didn't quite think about it in the way that you're explaining it and how absolutely heartbreaking it must be to give the news about yourself to one of the closest people to you in the world on the phone, no less, because they also weren't in the same city I was, right? What an awful thing to have to do, Erin.
Yeah, it's a rough position to be in because I so badly want to do the information justice. I'm just trying to figure it
Oh,
out myself. And then my first inclination, as I think many, many people's would be to try and comfort them and say, it's okay, I'm okay. This will be
hmm.
fine. We'll figure it out. It's not that bad. It was that bad, but
Wait, did you say those things? Were you like, it's okay, we'll figure it out?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Maybe we all would.
'Cause I just, like, I grew up in a funny dynamic where my dad was the one who would openly and readily cry in front of me. My mom, I've only seen cry maybe 2 to 3 times in my entire life. And
Mm.
so hearing my mom cry on the phone was really difficult because it's a very foreign thing. She's a very stoic, very determined woman. And so to let her sort of feelings kind of bleed through a little bit was really hard to hear. And
Of course.
the the other interesting thing is that in that instance, when we learned how bad it was and that it we would soon find out that there was no chance of cure, that it was incurable. It was the first time we heard the words incurable. And
Wait,
everything,
did you hear that? Did you hear, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
Did you hear the words incurable when that doctor walked in and said it's worse than, okay,
yes,
she did tell
in
you.
the hospital room, yes. So that was when she said your case of cancer is incurable. That was the very first time I'd heard it. And she took her time, and then eventually when she left, um, everything that was important in the world immediately became apparent. Everything that didn't matter melted away. And when I looked at my partner Sam and we held each other and we cried, it became really, really clear that that was the most important thing, was protecting that support and love we have each other. And Sam and I at this point, we'd been together 2.5 years, which is a pretty good amount of time. But we'd lived together now for about a year, and we knew that we loved each other and that we wanted to be together for a while. But I'm still in school. Sam has ambitions to go back to school. So we're like, we're not going to get married for a while. And if we do, it'd be a really long engagement because, there's no rush on anything. The one thing we wanted to do was to get married. That was the one thing that felt within our control. Like it was a life milestone that was still very much within reach. And in that moment, after the doctor left and I called my parents, we were just processing everything. That's when we decided to get married. And it's a really sad proposal story, but that became some piece of hope that really carried us through the rounds of palliative treatments and the sudden move back to my hometown to receive better care and all those really difficult life milestones that would come ahead in the following months. We had a beautiful little wedding to look forward to that was just going to be for us. And it was a way that we could show and make real the love that we have for each other in a way that was joyful in a really heavy and difficult time.
Who popped the question?
Funnily enough, it was Sam who's been most resistant to getting married. Where I come from divorced parents, so I thought I was going to be the person who was resistant to getting married and things like that. And then I met Sam, and I was like, "Oh, you're different. This is nice. The security of marriage sounds quite lovely, actually." And Sam was like, "But there's no rush. Like it's okay. Like we can live fully complex lives as individuals and still be committed to each other." And I said, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And then it was Sam who was like, "I really do think that we should get married."
Ugh. Okay, do you pick out rings together?
No. And I'll tell you why. It's because I gave
Yes.
Sam one of my grandmother's rings, my beloved grandmother.
Ah,
So Sam has an heirloom ring from me. And then I picked out my own ring, which is a
good for
controversial
you,
thing to
girl.
talk about because I think there's a lot of romance in being surprised with the ring and your partner picking out for you. But I really wanted the chance to pick something that I really like. And it turned out that I picked a ring when I looked at it, it reminded me of Sam, where it's a blue tanzanite stone with, I guess, a white gold band, which is the kind of colors that Sam would wear. And the ring, my grandmother's ring is a gold ring, yellow gold with diamonds in it in a kind of Art Nouveau styling. And it's kind of like we're wearing the ring that is most like the other person's personality. So it's more of a reminder of who we're married to or who we're engaged to than it would be me just picking out the best ring for me in a lot of ways. So it's a
Oh,
little
that's really
controversial, but I
beautiful.
did pick out my own.
And then you got married, instead of me trying to guess, I think it was 3 months ago. Was it 3 months
May
ago?
18th. Yeah. It was
May
almost,
18th
yeah. It was over the Victoria Day long weekend
at the cottage,
at
at
Sam's
a cottage.
cottage. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Were Did cancer ruin the goddamn day?
Yeah, a little bit. So, Sam and I, we have a really strong network of friends. We're kind of in the stage of life in your late 20s where your friends are usually the closest people to you in your life, a little bit perhaps more so than your nuclear family, depending on your situation. So we had a lot of uh, great friends that we've come to love as family over the past several years. But because I was in treatment with chemotherapy, and Sam's cottage is truly like a small 1970s cottage. It's not like a when people say their cottage and it's actually a lavish mansion on the lakefront. It truly is like a small cottage. And so we had a kind of a limitation both for my health and the capacity of the space of who we could have. And so we ended up having to not really invite our friends, which was really difficult for the wedding day. And it was also vastly just our closest family members. And so we had 20 people come to the wedding, and we got pretty much 10 people each to invite. And
Mm.
then Sam's brother was the officiant. And so the wedding itself, a lot of it was lovely. It was a morning wedding with like a brunch after that we catered. And originally we saw ourselves getting married on the dock by the water, but of course it was raining that day. So last minute, everything had to be shuffled inside. But it ended up being a really intimate, quiet ceremony in front of the fireplace. And there was a lot of people who were just really happy for us and happy that we'd reached this place of having a day that we determined no matter what would be a day for us to celebrate
Mm-hmm.
the the lovely things in life instead of constantly having to battle through the most difficult aspects of illness that we had. So because I've been in chemotherapy, I'd lost the majority of my hair, and my body was very different from how it was even several months before. And so I chose to wear a wig, which I've got a great story about that. But I wore this wig that was kind of like my old hair color, and we had gone a little shopping, and I had bought perhaps the last wedding garment at the Bay in Canada, which was a white jumpsuit. Just as the Bay was shutting its doors, I found what I was going to wear. And then Sam had found a lovely suit to wear as well. And we stood before each other, so we wrote our own vows. And the way I kind of opened my vows was a way to acknowledge the cancer elephant in the room, or there are so many people who'd be well within their right after about 2.5 years of being together, would sit in that room after hearing that I have late stage cancer and say, I'm so sorry, you're great and all, but I need to go. This is too much for me to handle. And they would be both in their right to say that. But inside, my dear sweet love Sam said the exact opposite, where she wanted to commit further to my sinking ship and wanted to be a part of this. And so I really wanted to start my vows that way, saying that like Sam is not marrying me out of pity. This isn't a last minute decision just to make Erin happy. Where it really was, we do love each other and we would have ended up anyways together. It's just a matter of even with I think one of the hardest things a couple can weather together, one of which being severe illness. Sam wanted to stay more, wanted to take a leave from work to be my caregiver, wanted to live in my mom's house for over 6 months while undergoing chemo to take care of me, where it's just all of those incredibly stressful, heavy things. Sam at no point was wanted to leave or wanted a break or wanted to
Mm.
be separated, where she just wanted to have every minute with me, which is
Being
really
the
lovely.
person who it's so lovely, and I'm thinking of Sam in that role, not as your wife actually, but in the caregiver role who steps into it willingly with open arms as she did and continues to do. And I just wonder for you, because that's more questions for Sam, but for you as the person who is the patient who needs all the support and care, who's physically going through this and mentally going through this, how do you, or can you even think of this, care for Sam?
Yeah, this comes up a lot, and something that I recommend to anybody, regardless if you have advanced illness in your life or not, is couples therapy. It's something that Sam and I have been very open that even before cancer, we had gone through sessions of couples therapy together when deciding to move in, what that would look like, what our fears and stressors are about it, that sort of thing. So we had a really strong basis of communication. And so when it came to getting to a part where, Sam is really taking care of me, where I'm not, I went, especially in the height of doing aggressive chemo, I wasn't capable of organizing my own medications, managing doctor's appointments, of tidying or doing laundry or those kinds of things. I was really worried about accepting that help and not feeling capable of giving it back to her. And the place we've reached with it is that in a relationship there are different seasons of moments when I have cared more for Sam because she worked a 9 to 5. I was a stay-at-home student where I would take care of her home more often or do groceries. And we are in a season now where Sam is stepping up to take care of me, and we've had that place of being able to talk about, okay, when is enough enough? When does Sam need to take a break? What ways would actually feel restful instead of stressful to her? And so we'd gotten to a place where we could actually talk about what was actually within her capacity, especially after getting in the rhythm of what the cancer world is like, what she was capable of doing, and when a break was needed, when we needed to call in friends or my mom or things like that, or my sister. And then when Sam feels happy and capable of taking on things. And if you were to ask her, Sam would say that she's really happy to do things like the dishes or laundry or cleaning or whatever, so that I get to I have the capacity, instead of putting them towards housework and maintenance, I can put it towards things that I like and that are creative and are artful and are enjoyable. And that she would so happily take that on so I can have my energy dedicated to things that I really like, which is an enormous gift I don't want to take for granted.
Yeah, Sam's an incredible human, as are
Yeah.
you. And I want to ask you about, yeah, what do you do with the days where you have energy for something? What is the things you are reaching for now? And has it
Yeah.
changed? Like maybe it's the same stuff you were reaching for before.
Yeah. And it's in those touchstone moments when we would catch up every so often, when I had to move to Hamilton because the healthcare here in Hamilton, Ontario is the second best cancer institute in Canada. It's also my hometown. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to move from Ottawa, where I had a lot of trouble with the medical system and them taking me seriously, to then go to a place where it was really easy. So in a drop of a hat, we moved back to my hometown overnight, essentially. Um, and our lives looked really different. I was going through chemo for my own comfort. We going into it not knowing that there's no chance of remission or cure. And so I found myself in this 3-week cycle of getting pummeled with poison and then having about 2 weeks to recover from it so I could do it again. And so in that time, there were days where I just slept all day, where it was too difficult to get up and out of bed. I was too exhausted. And so I would just sleep, or I would watch The Price is Right and then have a nap later on.
The Price is Right. Come on.
Yeah,
Love
no matter
Island.
Love Island and The Price is Right. It soothes a weary soul. Price is Right.
Wait, is that the guy? What's the guy that does that now? Not
Drew
Bob Barker,
Carey.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's
Drew
Drew
Carey.
Carey.
Is he doing
Yeah.
good? Is he
You
good?
know what? He does a good job. Yeah, I think this is a quick pause for a Price is Right review. Drew
I
Carey
like
does
it.
an excellent job as a host because he's very good with like the everyday American. He's good chatting with every kind of person that comes on the show, which I think is a very unique skill. So I think Drew Carey does a great job.
I love
He
it.
thoroughly enjoys it. Yeah,
Throw out to
it's
Drew
excellent.
Carey.
Yeah, shout out to Drew Carey. Thanks for everything you do, man.
Thanks for helping me through my terrible chemo moments when I couldn't get off the couch,
Yeah.
but you were there. Drew Carey
Every
and
day at
Sam.
11. Yeah, exactly. I should have been thanking Drew
Okay, so
Carey in
you're
my vows.
I'll put it in the episode notes. I'll
Beautiful.
link
Thank
to
you.
Drew Carey.
Yeah. Perfect.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay, so
to
yeah.
answer your question, the actual question you asked, not my tangent about daytime television, I took a hard look at myself back in the following weeks after my diagnosis. And like I said, the things that didn't really matter fell away very quickly, and the things that did stood. The two most important things to me in my life were marrying Sam and committing to her, having that milestone of marriage in my life. And the second was finishing my PhD. There's a lot of people I know who would be in my shoes. I was told by a doctor now almost a year ago that I would have maybe a year, perhaps two to live. And the one of the two things I wanted to do was to finish my PhD. I'm kind of in the final stretch of it, the back 25% of the degree to complete. And there's a lot of friends who said, yeah, I would have dropped out. Like I would have left that so I could go and pursue pottery or go and pursue rock climbing or what may be.
Go meet Drew Carey.
To be to gun to be a contestant on The Price is Right and to win the showcase. Some people, I mean, people,
No,
that's their
you wanted
dream.
to
I,
finish your PhD.
I wanted to
Bless.
finish my PhD. And like I mentioned earlier, at first, before all this happened, my idea of what my dissertation, which is the final major project, essentially a book you research and write to complete your PhD, I was going to study queer archives in Canada and study how they were transferring a lot of their content online or digitizing it. And it was essentially a glorified excuse to do a Canadian road trip and to write about it. And I liked the project. It wasn't my passion work. It was fine. It was solid. But then all this happened, I started looking out and I tried to read things and I realized that there really wasn't anything written about incurable cancer in young adults, where that information didn't really exist. And more as I would talk to my friends and my loved ones, I found it was really difficult to connect with them. It was really difficult
You,
to,
sorry, you found it difficult to connect with your friends and close, like loved ones.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And also with other people who had cancer, where when I would talk to others who had cancer, I felt such a pang of longing to have their situation instead, where it's very uncommon to be 27 with incurable cancer, let alone cancer that can't be surgery on, or to be doing treatments of radiation and chemo just for comfort, not for treatment of disease. And so now I would try to connect with other people with cancer, and they'd be like, oh, it's stage two. And for every right, they're scared and nervous and not really sure. And we're told that it's a 60-40 chance of beating it. I would feel almost jealous because I have a 0% chance of beating my cancer.
Mm.
And so it became really hard then to connect with other people with cancer. And then in my own personal life, pivoting that direction, it was really difficult to explain to people just how dire my circumstances are, of how advanced the cancer is. Because typically, when a year ago, if I had come across someone who's in my shoes, I'd be in a similar place where I'd say, like, that's really terrible. I'm so sorry. You can do this. You can keep up hope. Man, cancer sucks. And it's like, yeah, that's all very much true. But at the same time, it's not about me having a lack of hope. It's just the reality that this cancer, there's no fight to it. It's already got me. What I'm fighting for isn't against the cancer. It's to try and maintain some quality of life for the life I've got left. And that's what I'm fighting for. That's why I do the chemo. That's why I go in and subject myself to constant tests and imaging and pokes and prodding and make my body a patient body, not my own, so I can have somewhat of some quality of life for the time I have. And in that quality of life, I really want to say the things that I've been thinking about, which is it's really impossible to communicate with people when you're kind of in this position of being a young adult where cancer is unexpected. And not only is it unexpected, it's permanent. And really digging into those things and really sharing my perspective in the hopes that it somewhat fills the gaps of the stories that are out there. To that there's no real example of kind of what I'm going through. So I want to offer my experiences as an example to hopefully speak to somebody else who might similarly feels isolated as I have been throughout this entire process.
Is there a particular way that someone close to you can show up that helps you sit in the reality of where you are? And I ask that because, speaking as someone who is watching you go through this or has watched other people go through this, there is this need to be hopeful, and without hope there's things are lost. I get it. But to meet you where your hope is, because I remember one of the
Mhm.
first times you and I talked together, it was about validating your situation instead of almost
Mhm.
like talking over you, to be like, well, Erin, there's always like there's always this one in a million chance. Or but and
Mhm.
you were saying to me how I think these were your words, so correct me if I'm wrong, how that almost takes away someone just being able to sit with you and being like, no, this is my situation, meet me here because I need you exactly where I am, not living somewhere else.
Yeah, almost exactly it. And it's a lot to ask of somebody socially to say, "Hey, I'm in this really devastating place in my life." And I'm sure when you go through really difficult things, you might feel similarly where, I feel really heavy and I've got a lot of sadness and a lot of grief that I'm experiencing. I want to invite you to sit with me in the grief of it and to hear me and to kind of witness me as I am now and to sort of sit in that space because it won't always be like this. There's moments of levity and laughter and normalcy, but like sometimes you just need someone. The best way to connect is to not try and make it easier for them to hang out with me and to actually just spend the 45 minutes, spend the 30 minutes just being like, wow, that's really terrible and being like, giving me space to kind of be as I am now. And that's requires a lot of emotional capacity that I've kind of learned a lot of people don't have, and that's okay. I understand it's a lot to ask, and there's a lot of really big confronting feelings that are happening now. And I also have this feeling that sometimes when I spend time with people and I kind of lay out exactly what's going on, and because they ask, I try to be as gentle as possible, but I get the sense that when I explain to them, 27, incurable stage 4 cancer, it's kind of their worst fear flashing before them. Where having an unexpected, incurable illness that will get you at any time is an unspoken fear among the masses. And so it's also hard to then ask for that space because I kind of realize that, oh, it's not just that I ask you to sit with me in these horrible feelings, is that I have to make space for the other persons too, of grieving my future with me and also reckoning with the fear that I think is kind of bubbling up at the same time within them.
Right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, people have to face what they don't want to face because you're sitting in front of them, and depending on the day, depending on the moment, maybe you're like, yeah, hope's not what I need right now. I need you to sit here and talk to me about how shitty this is.
Yeah.
Because I
And
remember asking you, sorry to cut you
no,
off.
no, please go ahead.
You were talking about your PhD program and how important it was for you to finish, and how important it is for you to try and make yourself feel as good as you can each and every day that you're here, because that's all you have, right? Like this
Hmm.
day and the next day that you get to show up and have energy and feel okay. And how, yeah, you said I'm not going to make tenure, but maybe I could teach a class, like maybe I could
Yeah.
teach one day. And is that still where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of having to process not having the future I wanted anymore. That I think is the most shocking, jarring part. Because when it comes to having to do the really shitty things as a patient of scans, procedures, treatments, what may be, that's for survival. That doesn't require bravery. There's a part of you that kind of kicks in where in order to see 3 months from now, 4 months from now, fingers crossed 3 years from now, I'll do it. That's fine. I can compartmentalize those things and I can unpack them in due time. But the parts of my brain that would say, okay, Sam and I are going to save XYZ dollars so we can go on a trip, or we could, Sam could go back to school, all those kinds of things. It's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't exist anymore. That's not guaranteed. There's no promise that I'll finish my degree and then typically what you do after a PhD in Canada is you apply for a fellowship, which is 1 or 2 years where you can write a book, maybe teach a class at a new university, and then you kind of shop around, try and be a contract instructor at universities, and you hope one day that you can apply for an opening at a university that's in your field, and you could get hired and eventually become a tenured professor. That's what I wanted. I've always loved academia. I love talking and reading and researching and writing. I just love the spirit of it, and I've felt a calling to be a professor. And I've had to really let a lot of that go. And I come across a lot of my colleagues who are also in my PhD program where they're winning really wonderful, prestigious scholarships. And I'm so happy for them because they deserve it. And I've got this longing of that I really want that, but it doesn't make sense because it doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't have this carry the same weight for a future where I'm kind of just fighting to be able to do the things that I like. I'm not in the business of doing a lot of the sort of scut work you do in your 20s to have a really nice future later on because it's not promised. It's not possible. So having to grieve my future has been a lot. And
Are
then
you
through that,
angry?
it's a great question. I I'm it I struggle with anger, not because I don't have it, but because I'm not angry at the cancer. Because at the end of the day, cancerous cells are made up of your cells. That it is a part of me and it is me. So it's really hard to kind of be like, fuck cancer, that's just terrible. It's like, no, I'm living with it as much as possible. I have to make my peace with that. It's more sadness and pain than it is anger at not having my future. Because there's nothing or there's no one or nothing to point the anger toward, if that makes sense. Um,
Hmm.
I think I'm angry when I kind of get resistance right now to trying to achieve my goals. So having difficulties trying to navigate the academic system when I kind of meet professors who tell me, well, no, we can't really give you that many accommodations because research takes the time it takes. And it's like, okay, now I'm angry at you because that's a
Yeah.
ridiculous thing to
Hmm.
say to someone like me in my position. Absurd.
Yeah.
So I feel angry towards that, but I really have made my peace and I'm focusing more on the grief that's associated with my future more than anything
How does it
else.
feel to sit in grief that a lot of us can't validate for you, I suppose, because I wasn't 27 living with incurable cancer, but I can sit and listen and gosh, I really appreciate when you give me time and we get to sit and connect because your time is precious and all time is precious, but your time is especially precious. Yet I can't validate it. I can't validate where you are. I can just sit. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's a really strange thing because in the instance in my life where I felt this intense of a grief, specifically the loss of my grandmother, who really meant a lot to me in my life, that was a huge grief that was kind of on a similar level to this. I didn't grieve her in anticipation. I, years before she died, I didn't start grieving her because she wouldn't be there afterwards. And so it's kind of a weird thing that I'm grieving something that doesn't exist anymore. I'm grieving potential, not guaranteed loss. And so it's a strange thing to invite people into because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to grieve the future that isn't guaranteed. So it's more of me letting go of and my dreams and what I wanted to make out of my life and letting that happen. and also trying to reorient towards, okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to live without dreams. What can I do now? What is now that is within my reach that I don't have to sort of set myself up for failure if it doesn't come or if I'm not well enough, and my life takes a drastically different turn. I think that's something that's very unique to being in your late 20s, perhaps 30s as well, with having this incurable cancer is when you're kind of in your late 40s, 50s, 60s, it's more likely or not you would have been able to check things off your bucket list, to reach certain areas with your life that you wanted, whether it's a sense of home, family, career. But when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, those things are kind of just getting started, where you're kind of just figuring out who you are and making it happen. And then for that to follow from under you is a very specific kind of surprise. Which, like you're saying, unless you've walked that path, or walked beside someone very similarly, it doesn't make sense. It's really, really strange. And
Do you ever have a
yeah.
moment when you're chatting with somebody who's in those shoes, like 40s, 50s, 60s, and have had those experiences? And I don't know, maybe they're complaining about something. Maybe they got stuck in traffic. Maybe their class got canceled. I don't know, something silly,
Mhm.
right? Like arbitrary. Even if it's something bigger, like their manager is really infuriating, or do you ever
Mhm.
just want to
Mhm.
shake them? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I and it makes sense. Like, I don't exist in uh, this. I think we all have our own version of reality. When we kind of walk down the street, the home we have, the friends we have, we kind of construct, who we are, the relationships we form, what our day to day looks like. And within that, we kind of prioritize things like your job, your love life, your friendships, your family, things like that. So it becomes like a hierarchy of importance. But when that bubble of your reality becomes popped, where that hierarchy of importance doesn't matter, it's then really tough to be like, well, my priority of importance is making sure I don't die soon and that I'm not in extraordinary pain every day. And that's apples and oranges to I've got a really abusive boss at work and I need to find a new job. Like, don't get me wrong, that's very significant. And in someone's reality bubble, that's really high importance because that impacts your quality of life, your day to day. But for me, being like, you just leave your job. Like, the stakes for me, if I were in your shoes, is just leave your job.
Just get the fuck out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. I'm not in the business of being miserable anymore.
Oh, not in the business of being miserable anymore.
Mhm.
Do you ever, though? Like, is Sam ever chewing too loud? Do like those little irritants just melt
Oh,
away now? Or are
yeah.
you ever like, man, eat one more grape and I'm gonna murder you?
I'm thinking the first like 2 months of the diagnosis being very new, I was like, nothing matters. Just the thing that's right in front of me, like that those were the stakes. The stakes were very high. But the more I settle into this being my life now, this being every day, my reality bubble kind of comes back. And so again, I'm being like, if you chew gum one more time, I swear to God. Or
Swear to God.
yeah, or being like, "Oh, I'm so annoyed I have to get the brakes redone on that car. Like, this is the worst thing to happen to me." And so it's
And
really
then you're like,
funny
oh no,
how
wait, I have cancer. Right.
your brain wants life to return back to normal, or it's so
Mm,
nice to be distracted by everyday problems compared to life or death problems. And there's
yeah. Like,
such a draw to that distraction
do you ever forget that you have cancer?
every day,
You forget
every
at a
single
point
day.
every day.
Yeah.
And when it comes back to you, is it like this like crushing like fuck? Or are you like,
I think both. I think it's a range. Some days it's kind of like, oh, I just need to shake this off because that's not what's happening and it's okay. And then other times it's like, oh, right. I have cancer and it's not going to go away. And I'm leaving all of kind of this mess behind me of all my loved ones
mm,
and the things I aspired to. don't wonder, at least anymore. Really, to the things that I used to aspire to.
Or they don't
Getting
matter in
tenure
the
as a
same
professor.
way. Yeah, like
Yeah.
before they mattered in this, like, especially for where you were going, a PhD program is all about the long game. But
Hmm.
they matter in the day to day. But I can only imagine your brain has to really rewire that, especially given that you want to complete your PhD and as long as you can keep going, you want to teach. I'm sure you want a fellowship. I'm sure like, but
Yeah.
it's not a long game anymore because it almost takes away the purpose of it or probably I
Hmm.
mean I'm putting words in your mouth so please correct me, but
Hmm.
if you continue to make it the long game you might stop doing it because you'll be like, wait a minute, who am I
Hmm.
fooling? Or who knows where
Well,
your mind goes, but
yeah. Well, and also realistically, I I come from a very normal middle class family. I've afforded my education because I've been really lucky to win scholarships that paid for most of it. I
lucky,
had
hard working, hard
I hard
working,
earned.
s- smart,
Some of it's a
determined.
lottery,
Yes.
but and then I also always worked. So I started my first job I got at 15. In undergrad, I had 4 jobs at any given time, and I worked really hard to kind of afford my life. So something like I've always wanted to own a house is not really realistic because right now with my health being up and down and treatment, working, I can't guarantee work. And because I'm a student, I'm not technically eligible for things like because I'm married to Sam, who has a 9 to 5 stable job. I'm not really eligible for disability. So I'm in this weird in between place where we're okay, we're fine financially, but those bigger goals of house ownership are kind of out of reach where I don't have the capacity or the ability to build that financial foundation. And similar to schoolwork, where I definitely think I have the drive and ambition to finish my degree. And, if I still have the energy, if I'm still in this window of capability, then I would love to turn my dissertation perhaps into a book or to edit it into something that I could self publish at the very least. But beyond that, like a contract instructor, you have to guarantee that for a span of at least 12 weeks, you'll be well enough teaching, grading, dealing with students' concerns or questions. And that's not something that even right now I'm feeling pretty well, can't guarantee. So it's a bit of a pickle in a lot of ways. But at the same time, because I don't have to worry about working hard enough of being a candidate for a fellowship or a candidate for a scholarship, then I can say I can watch The Price is Right. And if I watch The Price is Right and then went for a walk up and down the street, that's a successful day. That's a really great day.
This is just going to be a Drew Carey Stan podcast now.
Yeah.
Also, the tagline is incurable cancer is a real pickle.
Yeah.
Okay, besides Price is Right, and I know you
Mhm.
love Love Island.
Mhm.
It's called Love Island, right? Am I saying it
Oh,
right?
yes. Oh,
Yes.
yes. Like the
What
Stanford prison
lights you up?
experiment meets dating. No, the most important thing, I'm a very social, extroverted person. So my friendships and relationships are the thing I make the most. I try to cut out the most time for. I try to spend the most time with people that I can. So those things, I always feel energized. I feel better. I feel excited. Like when I talk to my best friend Haley, sometimes going through being like, man, I feel really tired today. But if I know I have a FaceTime with Haley for even 20 minutes, I'll feel fantastic. So those are things that make me so incredibly happy is maintaining those relationships, especially now that I live 5 hours away from my closest friends. That's extraordinarily important. The other things is that I've always loved TV. It's one of my favorite things. There's a reason why I studied it for a really long time. I love all kinds of TV, reality TV, scripted, nonfiction, fiction, perhaps daytime television even. I've always really loved stories and storytelling, and I find TV one of the best ways to engage both visual, auditory, and written-based narrative storytelling elements. And it's just a beautiful place to escape to, whether it's a world that's like your own, so if you've seen, or if it's something that's so unbelievably different that it's escapism. So I adore television. I'm also new to video games. I've never been much of a gaming person, but a very good friend of mine from high school gifted Sam and I a PlayStation for a wedding gift. And we've been playing it like crazy. So it's become like a new love in our lives.
Wait, I've never been much of a gamer. I mean, I do love playing Dr. Mario
Oh,
because,
yeah.
yeah, no, I grew up in the 80s. I
Mhm.
also, if anybody could get me Sega's Wonder Boy, I can't even remember it, but I remember loving it. What are you playing on PlayStation?
Right now, we're playing this game called Baldur's Gate 3, and it is a branching story narrative. So it's kind of like one of those tell your own adventure storybooks where if it's, oh, if you choose to slay the dragon, turn to page 49. It's kind of like that, but me, it's a video game, and you go through the story seeing if you're successful or not, kind of using the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, where you roll a die, and if you kind of hit a certain place, then you succeed. If you don't, then you don't. And so it's this high fantasy storytelling game. We have, I think, clocked like 140 hours on it, and we're like only halfway through.
My God, I'm
Uh,
so happy for the two of you.
yeah, so it's a fun way to engage with storytelling that I didn't really realize how enjoyable and encapsulating it was. So
Oh,
video games from out there? Yeah.
and what about, I mean, we cannot talk, you and I, without bringing up the tarot cards. Did you pull a card today?
Yes, so I pull a card every day. And so today's card was actually the strength card, which is really lovely.
And what does
So
that mean?
in a tarot deck, there's kind of two decks that are shuffled into one. Strength is in the first deck called the Major Arcana. It's about big sort of universe forces. And the strength card is a picture of a woman holding a lion's mouth open, peering inside with ease. And the strength card is all about knowing your own strength. It's all about knowing that you've had the ability and the strength to tame whatever forces are in your life. So that was today's card, which is lovely. It's a practice. I started pulling a daily card every day since November when I first got my diagnosis. It was a suggestion from a professor of mine, actually, of just pulling one card a day to see just what happens. Don't make it super onerous or big. And then I would kind of write out the card and then do a bullet point of what happened that day as my journal entry. I
Oh,
love tarot. Yeah, I love tarot.
yeah.
And for
You,
me, it's less about unlocking the future and more about having a tool to reflect.
yeah, you've really made me love tarot. And I don't pull a card every day, but I think about it often. And I mean, I probably pull one every couple of weeks, or I'll pull three. Or if one falls out, then I'm especially like, this was meant to be. But you
Mhm.
really got me into it. And Sam crocheted me my little tarot deck holder, which I love.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and I have one of Sam's crochet tarot holders here.
oh, here's mine. Wait, Theo, because you guys used to watch Theo, so you know
Mhm.
he pulled on this. So now it looks like an enlarged clitoris.
Perfect. If anyone was wondering in visual, there you go.
But come on, how beautiful is this?
Yeah,
Yeah, crocheted
yeah.
me. How are you feeling today?
That's a good question. So today I'm pretty well. I'm at a point in time where I've done 9 cycles of chemotherapy. I've done 5 rounds of radiation, and there's some stability in my cancer. So the chemo's been a little effective in kind of helping shrink and reduce the spread. And it's at a point right now where it's perhaps more harmful if I keep doing chemo at this point in time than it would be effective. And so while there's a sense of stability in my imaging and my blood work, my doctor's actually giving me the next 2 months to take a break from any treatment. And then we'll regroup, see what happened, and go from there. So today, not having been poisoned in a little while, I feel really great and I feel very much
Oh,
myself. I have about, I
oh,
think, like 70% of my old capacity.
beautiful. The 2 months off, is there any part of you that feels like, but we're not attacking this invader, or are you at peace with giving your body a break?
At the beginning, when my doctor first floated it, I was terrified. I was very uncertain if that was the right choice. Especially because I had known how aggressive this cancer is, how quickly I needed treatment, all those kinds of things in order to give me a chance of living longer. It felt almost reckless to take a
Mm.
break from treatment, that I wasn't doing everything within my power to reduce the impact as much as humanly possible. But it turns out that the break would be the most effective treatment at this point in time, where my liver's taken a really big beating and would probably benefit greatly from just having a break from chemo. And the part where I try not to get my hopes up a little too much is after this sort of couple months break, when we do a new CT scan in September and regroup. If everything is still the same, then that could be another 3 months of a break, and so on and so forth. So I'm so hopeful that's the case, that I get to just continue living with the cancer as it is. But I'm also trying not to convince myself that's exactly how it's going to happen. That if I have to go back into the chemo cycles, that to be ready for that as well.
Because if you focus too much on the power of positive thinking, this is going to work and
Mhm.
I won't have chemo, da, 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 and then you get the news, okay, it's grown, or there's a new spot, or we need to go
Mhm.
back into chemo. The devastation of that will kind of take you out for a little bit. Is that the
Yeah, absolutely. Because it chemo at the beginning, I was like, this isn't so bad. The movies are overstating it. And the more you do it, it has a cumulative effect. And so by the
well,
end, it was not so
you're like,
happy.
My God, my tolerance for pain and poison is
I'm like, man, I would have made a great pirate. Not gonna- but by the end of 9 rounds, I was like, ooh, yeah, this is terrible. Maybe I was
the end of
wrong.
9 rounds. The end of 9 rounds, right? Because it gets it accumulates, it gets worse.
It
The
gets
side effects.
every time the side effects get worse, and that's just because your body has a harder and harder time kind of filtering out the chemo. Um,
Okay.
the chemo's effectiveness can stay the same, but it's just how much your body needs, how much time and energy your body needs to bounce back changes greatly. When you're on chemo, the first couple days after an infusion, for everybody, it's different. There's a billion and one kinds of chemotherapy you can do, but for me, you get the infusion and then you have like 1 or 2 days where you're like, oh, I'm pretty normal. Like that was okay. This was all right. And then it's about day three. It really feels like you've been overtaken by a flu, but you don't have the flu, where your body's achy, you have a cold sweat, you are nauseous, and you don't really want to eat anything, and you're really easily exhausted. And that lasts for a couple of days. And when it lifts and I would feel okay and ready to perhaps, go out to the grocery store, get crazy, then I wouldn't have an immune system. My immune system would have been knocked out by the chemo. And so I would have to be really careful about what I
Oh,
do, who I see, that kind of thing. And then it would take about 2 weeks for my immune system to be just barely strong enough to do more chemo. So
got
that's
it.
what the cycles lock you into, which is a different kind of mindset, I think, to get through those 3 weeks at a time you kind of take life.
So now that you have 2 months chemo free, do you think you'll have a little celebration with your like best friends to celebrate you and Sam?
Yeah, we're hoping to get back to Ottawa in the next couple of weeks or so, and we would love to have our friends over to Sam's parents' house, who have offered their house very graciously to host a whole whack of
Oh,
our friends who are in town to come over and to finally have that sort of wedding celebration we were hoping for. So we still have our outfits. I have my jumpsuit. Sam has her suit, and we were like, oh, we should wear that again and invite everybody and just have like a lovely like backyard party just to see everyone and have that celebration. So something that we're really looking forward to piecing together. And the other thing we've been
nice.
really looking forward to as well as traveling. Sam and I love to travel. And for this little bit of a break, it's safe enough for me to travel within Canada, which is great. So we're looking at, oh,
Oh,
where should we do a road trip to? Could we catch a flight out to BC? What's kind of possible for us? What would be a lot of fun and really enjoyable? So that's something
you know I'm
that's on the table again.
I'm going to point you to Newfoundland, right?
I've
So
been thinking about Newfoundland.
do
I know
it.
that's where you're from, but if you had to pitch Newfoundland to me, what's the things to see? What's there to do there?
Okay,
Or just experience?
I would do a road trip because you and Sam can fill that car ride with a lot of chats and podcasts, and maybe you'll read to each other. Adorable.
Mhm.
Because I mean, the ferry ride, whatever, you hop on the ferry at 11:30 in the night, unless you want to do it in the day and like watch the waves go by, which is quite beautiful. But I kind of like to get on 11:30 in the night, crawl into your bed, you have a little bear, because of course, and then you wake up. I don't know, you dock at like 7 a.m., get in the car, and then I would go straight up the West Coast, up north into Port. I mean, I wouldn't go all the way to Port Basque if I were you, but you could. I mean, it's pretty beautiful. But Gross Morn, Rocky Harbor, oh my God, it's dreamy. And you can stay in a little motel or a hotel, or you could camp. There's trailers there that you could rent. It's I mean, BC is beautiful. I mean, Canada is beautiful. There's so many places that I want to see, but there's something otherworldly about Gross Morn and Rocky Harbor in that area, and so serene. And you guys love to walk, so there's a million beautiful trails. And then I mean, it's a long drive to get to the East Coast where I'm from. But one time, David and I did the drive literally reading a book to each other. Like I started reading, and then we'd switch, and he'd take a break driving and
Mm,
he'd read to me. It was really sweet. So, but anyway, okay, so you drive to the East Coast, which is stunning and beautiful in a different way, and just the most hearty, lovely
mm,
people and culture, and just sit in it. And then when you drive back, you could drive through PEI, which is you can't drive through, you have to like detour to get to PEI, or I don't know if you want to go into the States right now, but St. Andrews
mm,
by the Sea, I've never been, but I've wanted to do that, but might wait 4 years
mm.
or indeterminate amount of
Oh,
time.
yeah, however amount of time it
Anyway,
takes, yes. Yeah.
yeah. So there's my pitch for Newfoundland.
Mm,
it's you know how they always say it's not the product, it's the process, or I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's not the
yeah.
destination so much as it's just the
The
drive.
journey.
Yeah, and driving across Canada, it's really nice. Yeah, I really love it. And even stopping in New Brunswick, like we have our rhythm now because I like to drive home so I can get Theo over there and stay for a longer
Mm,
time than a week, which has been a real gift. And having our little walk around Fredericton, which is a really beautiful town. And anyway,
mm,
it's quite lovely. And I think you and Sam, I can just see your souls just like take a sigh
mm,
once you hit Newfoundland and the ocean, and
mhm.
it's really beautiful. Yeah, so I highly recommend that trip.
I don't know how much money Sam has given you to try and convince me, because I swear to you, the taking turns driving while reading to each other from a book to the East Coast is exactly what Sam has been describing to me the past few days of exactly what she wants to do. So I don't know if it's I should really just listen and take a cue that
Do
you
it.
and my wife are absolutely right and that this is the place to go, and then I'm being resistant for
Do
no
it.
good reason. I'm just stubborn like that. But that sounds beautiful. That sounds lovely.
And obviously go have a dinner with my mom and my sister, who would glad oh, my mom will cook for
Absolutely
you. She
would.
is my God, my mom is a good cook. My mom is such a good cook that she's become intolerable to eat out with.
Which is my kind of
Intolerable.
lady, I gotta say.
Yeah, you've met her. Yeah, you get to have a little piece of Danielle and mom. It'd be sweet. I think you guys will have such a good time. How, speaking of moms and sisters and family, how are your family doing now?
Yeah, they're doing a lot better. It's been tough because, like I mentioned, for the first 6 months of my treatment, Sam and I lived with my mom. And so ever since we moved out, we got an apartment of our own, which is something that felt right to us the more we realized how long we'd be in Hamilton. It's been hard for her to suddenly go from being an active caregiver to us being, although we're only 15 minutes down the road, having an empty house again. And so I think that's been a little shocking. And like I've mentioned before, my mom's an extraordinarily dedicated, hardworking person. So I think she's been struggling a little of returning back to her regular retired life, but then also finding a lot of comfort in writing. My mom's a big writer. And so I think that's a way for her. And my sister, I think now that I'm living here, it's a lot more relaxed for her, where she can everything isn't as extreme, and so we can settle into more of a routine. I also have a younger brother, which I gotta say, our relationship hasn't cancer's made it great. I mean, where we had always a sibling rivalry sort of thing going on, but cancer's really improved our relationship. So in that regard, I would highly recommend. Do you have a brother
Is your
that you
brother in
have
Hamilton?
Yes, almost my entire
Yeah.
family.
Not getting off the family member. It can't hurt.
Cancer, yeah, that solves it really quickly.
Yeah, your brother lives in Hamilton as well?
Yes, yes, he does.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't know that.
So both
Okay.
of them
And your
do.
dad, how's he doing? I know he doesn't live there, but how's he doing?
Yeah, I think my dad's having a little bit of a harder time. He's still working. My dad's a theater director, so he travels to different theaters for his shows, and he lives in the States primarily. And so I haven't been able to see him as much, but he keeps in touch, certainly. But I think he has a harder time because he was a caregiver to my grandmother while she had cancer before she died. And so I think it's perhaps difficult for him to kind of see me go through the similar things that she did. But it was something with you, Nadine, I was kind of wondering from your perspective as a child of a parent who died from cancer, to my understanding, um, how is it coming across cancer, whether it's like on TV shows or with other people? Is there anything inside of you that's kind of difficult with it, or has your relationship to like the idea of cancer changed?
Oh, God, great question. It doesn't. So, okay. You remember the show This Is Us, that show?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't know if it's still on. I remember liking that show, and then I remember having a hard stop.
Mm,
And it wasn't about cancer. I think he died because he went into a fire, right? But anyway,
mhm,
so cancer, the only thing I can think of that changed was that show. I remember just having a hard stop on that. And then one of my favorite Christmas movies, I really love Christmas, and I don't love to rewatch a movie. It, I find it like insufferable in many ways to rewatch a movie, even though I'll watch a
yeah.
comfort show over and over again. But I will rewatch Christmas shows or movies. I love them. And one of the shows I love is called The Family Stone, which I still
Mm,
haven't actually rewatched because that show gutted me when I had both parents. Would I watch it this Christmas? It's only been 5 years. And then on the flip side, it's already been 5 years.
mhm.
Maybe, but I don't know that there's something. So there is obviously something still there, but I don't cancer. Uh, I'm kind of like you. When something happens, I want to really understand it. I want to intake information. So when my dad was diagnosed in this weird serendipitous way, the book on my nightstand at the time was by Bill Bryson and it was called The Body. And I just so happened to be around the beginning of the book and it goes through cancer. And it's like, cancer is literally just a cell, I'm not saying this right, but like a faulty cell that
Mhm.
replicates and somehow gets through our ability to get rid of it out of our body. And we have them every single day. I don't know how many times, but hundreds, probably thousands. Someone's listening going like hundreds of thousands. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
have them now and everyone, we all have them and our body has a pretty good detecting system to get rid of it.
Mm,
And understanding that and understanding why cancer is incurable, it's because it's not like, oh, you have asthma and here's how it presents in everybody. Cancer really is unique in every single individual.
mhm,
So I think understanding a bit of the science behind cancer, and I'm only scratching the surface of what people who work in this area understand, it made me come at it from a different angle. And it probably I do that so it's not so emotional because I like to like be in my
mhm,
head and not in my
mhm.
heart. That's just my survival skills right there.
Yeah.
Um, so if I'm watching a show and someone gets diagnosed with cancer, it doesn't, uh, not that I'm unfeeling, but I'm like, oh, cancer. I don't, it doesn't remind me of my dad, but I do look
Mhm,
over at David sometimes and I'm like, oh, he's sad. So I think for
mhm,
him, it almost hits home more. But no, it's not that. You know what gets me? When I'm in line buying something, like one time I was in line waiting to get plants for the house. It was like late spring, and my dad and my mom always got tons of flowers for the house. Not in late spring because in Newfoundland you can't get your plants until like the end of. probably June, early July, because there's frost up until then
Mhm.
and probably after. But anyway, when they would come visit me in the spring, we'd go get flowers and we'd plant them. And shortly after he died, I was in line at one of the garden centers here, and David had gone to do something. So standing there by myself, just staring off into space, thinking of nothing. And this
Yeah.
little girl ran up in front of me and called out dad, and I was gutted. Oh God, right. You still have a dad. But
Yeah.
and that's used as well. So cancer wise, no, it's something that happens, and it's inexplainable, and it's so unique to every single person that gets it. Yeah, I'm more this might sound cold or robotic, but I'm almost more fascinated by it, bewildered. Like it makes no
Mhm.
sense. There's no rhyme or reason. Why you? Why not me? Why him? Why not him? Like
Mhm.
yeah. I don't know
Well,
if
it's
that's
a
a
yeah, no, it makes total sense. And it is crazy because the statistic in Canada now is that 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime in Canada. And, that 50-50 chance is crazy that it can
Mhm.
touch either our own lives or someone that we know, but each instance just be so different. The position that you're in your life, the kind of cancer, the access you have to treatment, the support system you have, all of those things are so different, and it then manifests so uniquely to the person. And it's so unbelievably widespread, but there's not a perfect way to kind of capture how one person thinks about it or feels about it because it's so vastly different case to case. So I was really curious that even talking to me that evoked something for you about your own relationship to cancer. But yeah, makes a lot of sense that we kind of make our peace with it and process it in very different ways.
talking to you, like I lost a couple of friends young to cancer. One of my friends, she died when she was 39 from breast cancer, and another friend of mine, he was 40, he had bowel cancer. And at that time, I remember sitting with them thinking like how unjust, how unfair, and it felt otherworldly. And I don't know. I mean, when I found out you had cancer, it was gutting, but it was, I think talking to you has been different. Although I have to say, Erin, my friend who died a number of years ago, I remember one time some things you say remind me of Erin, and she would tell me, she was like, I'm a different bird. Like I've always viewed death very differently. And she said, I don't so much feel bad for myself as I feel bad for my husband and my son for hitching their caboose to my train. And she
Mhm.
always blew me away with how she would her perspective on things. And you remind me of that. Your perspective on life fascinates me in a really beautiful way. I think you're a real gift to humanity. And I've gotten to see more of your perspective through your writing that you're now sharing on Substack, which I'll definitely put in the episode notes because you're it is a gift, sincerely. And it, some people have to go insular when something happens to them, and I respect that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast is because I search for other people's stories when I'm going through something. And so I find, even though I'm not going through what you're going through, you help me see the world in a different way. And sure, I'm still going to probably sit next to David tonight if he's eating grapes or some chips. And I'm going to be like, oh my God, man, can you chew any louder? But for them, it makes me a kinder human. It makes me more empathetic to people. It broadens my perspective, and it's a window into another world that, yeah, like you said, when you sometimes you're sitting in front of people and they're like, this is a world I don't want to see. I'm so afraid of getting cancer. I'm so afraid of getting incurable cancer. We're afraid of what we don't know could happen. But equally, there's a real gift to being able to peek inside your world and learn something about our own and ourselves through it. So I think it's a really generous thing to share. So I don't find it hard to talk about. It's I'm empathetic and I'm sympathetic, and it's sometimes I'm like, this is so fucking unfair and unjust. But the other side of that is closing down that part of me and that part of you and that part of the world. And you can't experience everything unless you experience everything, Like for a long time after my dad died, I tried not to feel grief because simultaneously my businesses were closed and blah, blah. There's a bunch of things that were happening that I wanted to not feel because it was really difficult. And when I slowly came out of that a few years later with the help of a really good therapist, I realized I'd shut down feeling anything really. Like
Mhm.
like that's why when I broke my ankle, I didn't feel it. Like it hurt, but I was so used to feeling hurt that I was like, and what next? I might as well call out choreography. Like this is my life now. I live in this state. And I was only living in that state because I didn't want to feel anything. So I turned off feeling joy and turned off feeling any connection to myself. Yeah. That's how
Yeah,
I,
I think
yeah.
one of my hardest lessons over the past several months, and it's only been several months, I'm sure I've got many more to go, is
Mm,
it's really, really important to let feelings out when they happen to you, to express them. When something feels overwhelming and devastating, crying lets that feeling move through your body and to let it go. Because then otherwise it just builds. And at first I tried to really suppress it and just say, I'm just going to doing this and it's not going to be that big of a deal and it'll be okay. And if it, even if it isn't, and I tried to just power through and tuck that scared part away. And it just got so overwhelming and so much bigger. And so although I'm very much still uncomfortable crying and feeling that sadness and that sorrow, especially for my loved ones, thinking it's not really about me. In a lot of ways, it's about m- I try so hard to manage their loss, if that makes any sense, their future
Uh,
loss of
yes.
me.
Yeah.
But it's too hard, it's too great, and you just have to cry. Where I used to be the kind of person where it's like, I broke my hip, that doesn't matter. I have an exam to hand in, no problem. I'll work on that instead. Even when I was in and out of the ER, I was a research assistant conducting interviews with people while being like, okay, I can hold on for 45 minutes, no problem. And so it's really hard then, as you're saying, to actually be present with the really sad parts of you, the really pain parts
Hmm.
of you, and to make them you again, not make them foreign or something else, but to say, I am sad. It's not that there is a sad part of me. It's like, no, I am devastated. I am grieving. And that's
And
been
it's
so
okay
incredibly
to,
hard.
and it's okay to let that feeling wash through you because it does pass. Even I've talked to you and we have laughed. And I mean, one of my favorite things you said was, I mean, the gift of this is I don't have to care about single-use plastic straws. And I roared. And, but like, in order to have that true moment where, yeah, you can guffaw and for a split second while you're watching The Price is Right, forget that you have cancer. But I don't think you'd be able to have
Yes.
that unless you also felt the deep waves of grief and sometimes anger for whichever, and the anticipatory grief of it all, and the wanting to manage your people's grief as well, which I really resonate with. And one thing I've learned through my experiences is that when I try to manage somebody else's feelings about something that I'm going through, or whatever I try to do, because I do really like to try to manage people. I want everyone to feel
Hey,
good, it's like
yeah, if I can be devastated, everyone else can be happy. How much easier is that?
yeah, I just want you to be okay. But you're robbing them of their experience, right? You're robbing them of their ability to sit with Erin's cancer diagnosis, or sit with Erin's grief, or laugh with Erin about single-use plastics,
Yeah.
And when I think of it in that way, because I can only imagine what I would mentally go through, the anguish that I would put myself through trying to like help my partner, my best friend, my sister, my mom through, my brother through this, if I was going through it, it does take away their ability to figure it out for themselves, which, listen, I don't know how you feel about people saying, like, I'm glad I got cancer. I'm glad my dad died. I'm glad. Like, there is a gift in things. I do get that. And sometimes it's going to take years to find it. But you do take away someone's ability to find it for themselves. And so to truly connect with the experience. Yeah. So they'll be okay.
They will be okay. And the parts that I can do now is to try and be as present as possible, as much as I can. And that comes
Hmm.
with making my peace with the sad, difficult, craggy parts of me that are angry and grieving, but also so badly want to be hopeful and joyful. There is this remarkable sense of how much human beings want to survive, and how even though I've done all of these rounds of chemo and all these rounds of radiation, that my body wants to bounce back, that it wants to keep on living, be outside of my consciousness of it. But and then of course I want to be able to then take those moments of when my body recovers and can feel better to then share that with people. And it's not just about having them witness me and the difficult parts, but then to be like, yeah, and I really want to talk about these school things with you, or I really want to talk about those crazy moments when, we stole one gnome or things like that, where it's about the fun, enjoyable parts in addition to the hard, where you need the levity, otherwise the heavy becomes too much to carry alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just before we say goodbye for today, back to there's a gift in everything. How do you, living in your situation, feel about that?
Mm. It's something that I wrote about. So the day I got back from the hospital, where I decided, okay, I'm going to marry Sam and I'm going to finish my degree. Those are the things that are most important to me at this point in time. I was crying and talking about it with Sam about how awful it is. And I was saying it's almost like life is this pointillism painting where there is some greater picture that's happening with my cancer, but I'm way too close to the canvas. All I see is dots. I have no idea what the bigger picture is. And I may never find out what the point or the purpose of all this was, but it brings me a lot of relief to think that this is pointless and just difficult for the sake of being difficult, that there's perhaps something that can come from it. And so with my writing, it becomes important for me to share, talking with a friend on for a podcast about my experiences, about sharing them in writing, about doing as much research to kind of put information out there, that sort of thing. It gives purpose to me now. It helps me process and find a sense of catharsis with having incurable cancer. And it also allows me to leave something behind of the dots I've been able to connect together in order to help someone else see the picture as well. And so, although in a million years I don't want to have cancer now, I wish there's a version of me in a different universe that doesn't. But I think there is something really beautiful I can make of these kind of broken pieces that I can bring together in the time that I've got to help somebody else, to give someone else some perspective, and to leave the best parts of me behind for my loved ones while I still can.
You're such a gift. You're a gift
Nadine,
to
you are
know.
too. Thank you.
Thank you for all your time. I just love you.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me. As you can tell, I'm a real talker. Would love to chat anytime. And I'm so excited to see the other side of this recording.
Ah, me too. Okay. Mwah.